The sun hung low in the sky, a fiery orb casting long shadows across the endless expanse of golden sand. The desert was silent except for the occasional whisper of wind that stirred tiny grains into fleeting spirals. A lone figure trudged through this barren landscape, his boots sinking slightly with each step. His name was Marcus, and he had been wandering aimlessly for hours, or maybe days. Time blurred when you were hungry and thirsty. Marcus's clothes were torn, his face smeared with dirt and sweat. He carried nothing but an empty canteen slung over his shoulder and a tattered map tucked inside his pocket, a map that had failed him miserably. Every dune looked the same, every direction equally hopeless. His throat felt like parchment, dry and cracking, and his stomach growled in protest against its emptiness. Yet despite his exhaustion, something deep within him refused to give up. Survival wasn't just instinct, it was defiance. As he crested another dune, his weary eyes caught sight of something unusual, a splash of color amidst the monotony of beige and gold. At first, he thought it might be a mirage, one of those cruel tricks the desert played on desperate minds. But as he stumbled closer, blinking away the grit from his eyelashes, he realized it was real, a woman lying motionless on the sand. She was unlike anyone he'd ever seen before. Her skin shimmered faintly under the fading sunlight, not quite human but not entirely alien either. It reminded him of moonlight dancing on water, ethereal, otherworldly. Her hair cascaded around her like liquid silver, flowing even though there was no breeze. She wore what appeared to be a delicate garment made of woven light, shifting colors with every movement. For a moment, Marcus wondered if she was some kind of hallucination brought on by dehydration. But then she moved, a small twitch of her hand, and reality snapped back into focus. She was alive. Barely. Kneeling beside her, Marcus hesitated. Was helping her wise? What if she posed a danger? These questions flickered briefly in his mind, but they were quickly drowned out by compassion. If their roles were reversed, wouldn't he want someone to help him? He reached out tentatively, brushing her arm with his fingertips. Her skin was cool to the touch, impossibly smooth. She stirred, her eyelids fluttering open to reveal irises that glowed softly, like twin galaxies trapped within her gaze. Her lips parted, forming words in a language he didn't understand. The sound was melodic yet foreign, sending shivers down his spine. "I don't know what you're saying," Marcus admitted aloud, feeling foolish for speaking when she clearly couldn't comprehend him. "But I'll get you water. Hang on." He scanned the horizon, searching for anything useful, a patch of shade, perhaps, or signs of life. There was nothing. Just more sand stretching endlessly in all directions. He sighed, defeated, and turned back to her. She was watching him now, her glowing eyes filled with curiosity rather than fear. Despite her weakened state, there was an undeniable strength about her, a presence that commanded attention without effort. Marcus tore off a strip of fabric from his shirt and dipped it into the remnants of water left at the bottom of his canteen. Gently, he pressed the damp cloth to her lips. She flinched at first, startled, but then relaxed, allowing him to moisten her mouth. After a few moments, she managed to sit up, leaning heavily against him for support. Her body was surprisingly light, almost weightless, yet her touch sent strange sensations coursing through him, tingles of electricity that made his heart race. "Who are you?" Marcus asked softly, knowing full well she wouldn't understand. Still, he needed to say something, anything, to break the silence between them. To his astonishment, she tilted her head and replied in halting, broken English. "I am Lra." Her voice was soft, musical, carrying undertones of emotions he couldn't quite place. Marcus blinked, taken aback. How could she possibly speak his language? And why did her accent sound both ancient and futuristic at the same time? "You're not from here," he said slowly, stating the obvious. "Are you?" Lra shook her head, her silvery hair rippling like waves. "No. Lost. Crashed." She gestured vaguely toward the sky, her expression pained. "My ship gone. A crash survivor? From another planet?" Marcus's mind reeled at the implications. Aliens weren't supposed to exist outside of science fiction novels and conspiracy theories. Yet here she was, undeniable proof that humanity wasn't alone in the universe. part of him wanted to run, to flee this surreal encounter and pretend it never happened. But another part, stronger and more curious, rooted him firmly in place. "You need food," he said finally, forcing himself to focus on practical matters. "And shelter. We can't stay out here." Lra nodded weakly, her luminous eyes locking onto his. There was gratitude there, yes, but also something else, something deeper, more intense. It unnerved him, though he couldn't explain why. Together, they began walking, Marcus supporting most of her weight as they navigated the treacherous terrain. Each step was agonizingly slow, but they kept moving forward, driven by sheer willpower. As night fell, the temperature plummeted, transforming the scorching desert into a frigid wasteland. Marcus wrapped his arms around Lra, trying to shield her from the biting cold. Her skin remained cool, unaffected by the change in climate, but she leaned into him gratefully, her body trembling slightly. They eventually found refuge beneath a rocky overhang, where Marcus used his remaining energy to build a makeshift fire using scraps of driftwood he'd scavenged earlier. The flames cast flickering shadows on the stone walls, illuminating Lra's face in a way that made her appear even more otherworldly. She watched the fire with fascination, her glowing eyes reflecting the dancing light. "What is your world like?" Marcus asked after a while, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "Where do you come from?" Lra hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. "Different," she said simply. "Beautiful. Dangerous." "Dangerous how?" She looked at him, her gaze piercing. "Not safe for outsiders. Not safe for me anymore." Her cryptic response only deepened the mystery surrounding her. Marcus opened his mouth to ask more questions, but Lra suddenly winced, clutching her side as if struck by pain. Concerned, Marcus leaned closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" "No," she murmured, shaking her head. "Just tired. Weak." He frowned, unsure whether to believe her. Something about her demeanor suggested she was hiding something, some injury or ailment she didn't want him to know about. But pressing her further seemed futile. She wasn't ready to share everything yet. Instead, Marcus rummaged through his pack, pulling out a granola bar he'd forgotten he had. He offered it to her cautiously, unsure if human food would agree with her physiology. To his relief, she accepted it, nibbling delicately at the edges before devouring the rest with surprising speed. "Thank you," she whispered afterward, her voice tinged with sincerity. "You saved me." Marcus shrugged modestly, though warmth spread through his chest at her words. "It's what anyone would have done." "No," Lra countered firmly. "Not everyone. You are special." Her compliment caught him off guard, stirring emotions he hadn't felt in years. Special? Him? He was just a man who got lost in the desert, barely surviving himself. But looking into Lra's radiant eyes, he almost believed her. As the hours passed, sleep became inevitable. Exhaustion claimed Marcus first, his body finally succumbing to the strain of the day's events. Lra stayed awake longer, watching him intently as he drifted off. When he stirred briefly in his slumber, he caught glimpses of her staring at the stars above, her expression unreadable. For reasons he couldn't articulate, he sensed she was waiting for something, or someone. When morning came, the air was crisp and still. Marcus woke to find Lra already standing outside their shelter, gazing toward the horizon. She turned to him as he approached, her ethereal beauty illuminated by the rising sun. "We must go," she said urgently. "They'll come soon." "Who?" Marcus asked, alarmed. "Who's coming?" Lra hesitated, her glowing eyes clouded with uncertainty. "Enemies. Hunters. They won't stop until they find me." Fear gripped Marcus's chest, but he forced himself to remain calm. "Then we'll keep moving. We'll find somewhere safe." She studied him for a long moment, her gaze searching his face as if weighing his resolve. Finally, she nodded. "Okay. Together." And so they set off once again, heading deeper into the unknown. With each passing hour, Marcus grew more aware of the growing bond between them, a connection that transcended language and logic. But he also sensed that their journey was far from over, that dangers lurked ahead that neither of them could fully anticipate. Despite the odds stacked against them, Marcus found himself unwilling to leave Lyra's side. Whether it was loyalty, curiosity, or something more profound, he couldn't say. All he knew was that she needed him, and for the first time in years, he felt like he mattered. The desert stretched endlessly before them, a vast canvas of sand and sky. Yet amidst its desolation, two souls walked together, bound by fate and circumstance. Their story was only beginning, and already it promised to be extraordinary. Hours turned into days as Marcus and Lyra continued their trek through the unforgiving desert. The relentless sun bore down on them, its heat searing their skin and testing their endurance. Yet through it all, they pressed onward, driven by necessity and an unspoken understanding that stopping meant certain doom. During their journey, Lyra revealed fragments of her past. Her home planet, a place called Vera, which she described as a world of crystalline forests and floating cities suspended among the stars. Her people were advanced, possessing technology far beyond human comprehension, but they were also deeply divided. Wars raged across Vera's surface, fueled by greed and ambition, tearing apart families and communities. Lyra herself had fled, seeking refuge elsewhere, only to have her escape vessel crash land in Earth's desolate sands. As she spoke, her voice carried a haunting melody, painting vivid images in Marcus's mind. He envisioned towering spires of glass-like material reaching toward alien skies, rivers of liquid light winding through lush landscapes, and beings who communicated not just with words but with colors and vibrations. It was a world both beautiful and terrifying, a paradox of wonder and chaos. Yet for all her revelations, Lyra remained guarded about certain aspects of her existence. When Marcus probed too deeply into why she had left Vera or who exactly pursued her, she would deflect, changing the subject or falling silent altogether. Her evasiveness gnawed at him, planting seeds of doubt that occasionally sprouted into paranoia. Who, or what, was she really running from? And why had fate led her to him? One evening, as they rested beneath the shadow of a jagged cliff, Marcus confronted her directly. "Lyra, I need to know," he began, his tone firm yet gentle. "Who are these hunters you keep talking about? Why are they after you?" For a moment, she avoided his gaze, her glowing eyes fixed on the horizon. Then, with a heavy sigh, she turned to face him. "They are enforcers, servants of my father." "Your father?" Marcus echoed, confusion knitting his brow. "What does he have to do with this?" "He rules Vera," she explained, her voice tinged with bitterness. "Or rather, he tries to rule. His power is built on lies and fear. Those who oppose him disappear. Many have tried to stand against him, including me." Realization dawned on Marcus like a thunderclap. "Your royalty," he breathed, stunned. "That's why they're hunting you. You're a threat to his throne." Lyra nodded solemnly. "Yes. But it is not just my title they seek. It is something else. Something inside me." "What do you mean?" Marcus pressed, leaning closer. She hesitated, her luminous gaze searching his face as if debating how much to reveal. Finally, she placed a hand over her chest. "Here," she said softly. "There is energy, power. My ancestors called it the essence. It flows through our bloodline, granting us abilities beyond mortal comprehension. My father fears it. He covets it. And now, because of me, others do too." Marcus stared at her, awe mingling with disbelief. Abilities, powers. This wasn't just science fiction, it was mythology come to life. Yet the conviction in her voice left no room for skepticism. Whatever this essence was, it was real, and it made Lyra more than just an exile, it made her a target. "So that's why you crashed here," Marcus mused aloud. "You were trying to escape, to hide." "Yes," she admitted. "But I failed. They tracked me. That is why we must keep moving. They will not stop until they find me." The weight of her words settled heavily between them. Marcus felt the enormity of the situation pressing down on his shoulders. Protecting her wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about safeguarding something precious, something that could tip the balance of power in her galaxy. And yet, despite the danger, He couldn't bring himself to leave her side. As the days wore on, their bond deepened. Lyra began teaching Marcus snippets of her language, her melodic phrases rolling off his tongue awkwardly but earnestly. In return, he shared stories of Earth, its history, its cultures, its flaws. She listened intently, fascinated by the complexity of humanity, often marveling at how such fragile creatures could achieve so much. Their conversations weren't always easy. Sometimes, frustration bubbled to the surface when misunderstandings arose, or when exhaustion frayed their patience. But even in those moments, there was an underlying current of trust, a quiet assurance that they were in this together. One night, under a canopy of stars, Lyra demonstrated one of the abilities granted by her essence. Sitting cross-legged on the sand, she closed her eyes and raised her hands palm upward. Slowly, a faint glow emanated from her fingertips, spreading outward until it enveloped her entire form. The light pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat, casting intricate patterns on the ground around her. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked, mesmerized. "Feeling the energy," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Connecting with it. Healing myself." He watched in awe as bruises and cuts on her skin faded, vanishing as though they had never existed. When she opened her eyes, they sparkled with renewed vitality. "This is part of what makes me different," she explained. "But it also makes me vulnerable. Others can sense it. Use it against me." Marcus swallowed hard, grappling with the implications. If her powers were detectable, then their pursuers likely had ways of tracking her. No amount of distance could guarantee safety, not unless they found a way to mask her essence. "We need to find shelter," he said decisively. "Somewhere hidden. Somewhere they won't think to look." Lyra nodded, though doubt lingered in her expression. "There may be places like that. But finding them—" "We'll figure it out," Marcus interrupted, his voice steady despite the uncertainty gnawing at him. "We have to." Their search led them to an ancient ruin half buried in the sand, a crumbling temple whose origins predated recorded history. Its weathered stone walls bore carvings of celestial bodies and strange symbols, hinting at a civilization that once revered the heavens. Inside, the air was cool and still, offering respite from the harsh elements outside. "This will work," Marcus declared, examining the structure's layout. "We can fortify it, make it harder for anyone to find us." Lyra wandered through the ruins, her fingers tracing the etched symbols with reverence. "These markings, they remind me of home," she murmured. "Perhaps this place holds answers." Together, they set to work reinforcing the entrance and clearing debris from the interior. Days turned into weeks as they transformed the ruin into a livable sanctuary. During this time, their connection grew stronger, evolving into something neither of them could deny. There were stolen glances, lingering touches, and moments of laughter that broke the tension like sunlight piercing a storm cloud. But even in their newfound haven, the specter of danger loomed large. Lyra often spoke of dreams, visions, she called them, where shadowy figures closed in, their intentions malevolent. She woke from these nightmares trembling, her essence flaring uncontrollably. Each episode left her weaker, more drained, and Marcus feared what might happen if she couldn't recover. One fateful night, as they sat together beneath the starlit sky, Lyra turned to him with an intensity that took his breath away. "Marcus," she said, her voice trembling, "if they come for me, promise me you won't fight them." "What?" he exclaimed, incredulous. "How can you ask that? I'm not letting them take you." "You don't understand," she insisted, gripping his arm tightly. "They are relentless, ruthless. Fighting them would only end in death, for both of us. Please, promise me." Tears welled in her glowing eyes, and Marcus felt his resolve waver. How could he abandon her? How could he let her face such a fate alone? Yet the desperation in her plea struck a chord deep within him, reminding him of the stakes involved. "I promise," he whispered finally, though the words tasted bitter on his tongue. "But only if there's no other choice." Relief washed over her features, but it was fleeting. Before either of them could say more, a sudden rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. Dust rained down from the ceiling of the ruin, and the distant hum of engines filled the air. "They're here," Lyra whispered, her voice hollow with dread. Marcus's heart pounded as he grabbed her hand, pulling her to her feet. Outside, the desert was no longer empty. Shadows moved across the dunes, converging on their location with calculated precision. Lights pierced the darkness, illuminating the ruins like a beacon. "There's nowhere else to run," Marcus muttered grimly, his grip tightening on Lyra's hand. "We fight, or we die trying." She looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with sorrow and determination. "Then let us hope your promise isn't tested tonight." Side by side, they stepped out into the open, facing the unknown forces that had come to claim Lyra. The air crackled with tension as the hunters descended, their forms clad in sleek armor that gleamed menacingly under the moonlight. At their lead stood a figure cloaked in darkness, his presence radiating authority and menace. "You cannot protect her forever," the leader declared, his voice echoing like thunder. "Surrender her now, and your life will be spared." Marcus squared his shoulders, defiance blazing in his eyes. "Over my dead body." The leader chuckled, a cold, humorless sound. "As you wish." With a wave of his hand, the hunters surged forward, weapons drawn. Marcus braced himself, prepared to defend Lyra with everything he had. But before the first blow could land, Lyra stepped in front of him, her essence erupting in a blinding surge of light. "Stay behind me," she commanded, her voice ringing with power. Energy crackled around her, forming a barrier that repelled the attackers' advances. The hunters faltered, momentarily stunned by the display. Even the leader seemed taken aback, his confident demeanor wavering. "You dare defy me?" he snarled, raising his own weapon. "Your powers are nothing compared to mine." Lyra's response was swift and fierce. With a sweep of her arm, she unleashed a wave of energy that sent the hunters sprawling. Sand erupted in torrents, swallowing them whole as they struggled to regain their footing. Yet for every foe she incapacitated, more emerged from the shadows, relentless and unyielding. Marcus fought alongside her, wielding whatever makeshift weapons he could find. He hurled rocks, swung pieces of debris, and tackled enemies with sheer brute force. Though vastly outnumbered, he refused to yield, drawing strength from the woman who had become his anchor in this chaotic ordeal. But the battle took its toll. Lyra's movements grew sluggish, her essence flickering like a dying flame. Marcus saw the exhaustion etched into her features, the toll of channeling such immense power evident in every labored breath. Still, she pressed on, shielding him with her body whenever danger loomed too close. "Lyra, stop!" Marcus shouted, grabbing her arm as she prepared to unleash another devastating attack. "You're killing yourself." "I have to," she gasped, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I can't let them take me. Not again." Her words cut deeper than any blade, revealing the scars of a past she had barely spoken of. Marcus realized then that her fear wasn't just for herself, it was for him. She was willing to sacrifice everything to ensure his survival. "No," he said firmly, pulling her back. "We fight together, or we fall together. That's the deal." For a split second, their gazes locked, and Marcus saw the flicker of resolve reignite in her eyes. Nodding, she raised her hands once more, summoning the last reserves of her strength. Together, they unleashed a combined assault, blending her essence with Marcus's raw determination in a dazzling display of unity. The hunters recoiled, their ranks breaking under the onslaught. Even the leader hesitated, his confidence shaken by the ferocity of their resistance. For a moment, victory seemed within reach. But then, from the depths of the desert, a new threat emerged. A massive machine rose from the sands, its metallic frame towering over the battlefield like a colossus. Weapons bristled along its surface, and its single glowing eye scanned the area with predatory intent. "This ends now," the leader declared, retreating to the safety of the machine. "Destroy them." As the behemoth advanced, Marcus and Lyra exchanged a glance fraught with despair. They had pushed themselves to their limits, and now faced an enemy they couldn't hope to defeat. Yet even as hope waned, their bond remained unbroken, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of love transcending worlds. "What do we do?" Marcus asked, his voice barely audible over the roar of the approaching machine. Lyra hesitated, her glowing eyes dimming as fatigue claimed her. I don't know. For the first time since their journey began, Marcus felt truly powerless. But as the machine loomed closer, preparing to deliver the final blow, something unexpected happened. The ground beneath their feet trembled violently, and a deafening roar split the night air. From the shadows of the ruins emerged a figure neither of them recognized, a being cloaked in shimmering light, wielding a staff that pulsed with ancient energy. Its presence was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, commanding attention with an authority that silenced even the mechanical titan. "Enough," the figure intoned, its voice resonating like the tolling of a bell. "This conflict ends here." The hunters froze, their weapons lowering in deference. Even the machine halted its advance, its glowing eye flickering uncertainly. Marcus and Lyra stood side by side, too stunned to move, as the mysterious figure approached. "Who are you?" Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. The figure inclined its head, its features obscured by the radiant aura surrounding it. "An ally," it replied simply. "And perhaps, a savior." Before either of them could respond, the figure raised its staff, unleashing a burst of energy that engulfed the battlefield. When the light faded, the hunters were gone, vanished without a trace. Only the ruins, and the three figures standing amidst them, remained. "What just happened?" Marcus demanded, his voice laced with disbelief. The figure lowered its staff, turning its attention to Lyra. "Your journey is far from over," it said cryptically. "But know this, you are not alone. The essence flows through many veins, binding destinies across galaxies. Trust in it. Trust in yourselves." With that, the figure vanished, leaving behind only silence and unanswered questions. Marcus and Lyra stared at each other, their hearts pounding with equal parts relief and apprehension. "What does this mean?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lyra shook her head, her glowing eyes wide with wonder. "I don't know. But whatever happens next, we face it together." The mysterious figure's departure left an eerie stillness in the air, broken only by the soft rustle of wind sweeping through the ruins. Marcus and Lyra stood frozen, their minds struggling to process what had just transpired. The hunters were gone, vanished as if they had never existed, and yet the weight of their presence lingered, a reminder that danger was never truly far behind. "What do we do now?" Marcus asked finally, his voice tinged with both exhaustion and uncertainty. His body ached from the battle, every muscle screaming for rest, but his mind refused to let him relax. Not while so many questions remained unanswered. Lyra didn't respond immediately. She stared at the spot where the glowing figure had stood, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she turned to face Marcus, her luminous eyes filled with resolve. "We keep moving," she said firmly. That being saved us, but it wasn't an act of kindness. It was a message, a warning. They could come back. Marcus nodded grimly. He understood all too well. Their brief reprieve wasn't a gift, it was a chance, a fleeting opportunity to prepare for whatever came next. But preparation required resources, shelter, and time, things they sorely lacked in the unforgiving desert. "We can't stay here," he agreed. "This place isn't safe anymore. If those hunters return, or worse, if others find us, we won't have any defenses left." Lyra hesitated, her gaze drifting toward the horizon. "There is one place," she murmured after a long pause. "A sanctuary my people once used during times of war. It's hidden, protected by ancient technology. If we can reach it." "Then we go there," Marcus interrupted, determination hardening his tone. "Lead the way." The journey to the sanctuary tested them in ways neither had anticipated. The desert seemed alive with hostility, its endless dunes shifting unpredictably beneath their feet. Sandstorms swept across the landscape without warning, forcing them to take cover under makeshift shelters or press on blindly through stinging winds. Supplies dwindled rapidly, leaving them hungry and parched, their bodies pushed to the brink of collapse. Yet through it all, they found strength in each other. Lyra relied on Marcus's resilience, his unwavering belief that survival was possible no matter how dire the circumstances. In turn, Marcus drew courage from Lyra's quiet determination, her refusal to give up even when her essence flickered weakly within her. Together, they became more than two individuals fighting against impossible odds. They became a team, bound by trust and shared purpose. On the 5th day of their trek, the terrain began to change. Jagged cliffs rose abruptly from the sands, their rocky surfaces etched with strange symbols that glowed faintly under the moonlight. Lyra's steps quickened, her eyes lighting up with recognition. "We're close," she whispered, her voice tinged with hope. "Very close." Marcus followed closely behind her, shielding her from the biting cold that settled over the desert at night. As they rounded a particularly steep cliff, they stumbled upon a narrow canyon carved into the rock. At its entrance stood a massive stone archway, adorned with intricate carvings that pulsed faintly with the same energy that radiated from Lyra's essence. "This is it," Lyra breathed, stepping forward cautiously. She placed her hand against the archway, and the carvings flared to life, casting a warm golden light that illuminated the entire canyon. A low hum filled the air, resonating deep within their chests. "It recognizes you," Marcus observed, watching in awe as the glow intensified. "Yes," Lyra replied, her voice trembling with emotion. "It's keyed to my bloodline, to the essence. Only someone like me can open it." She closed her eyes, focusing intently. The ground beneath their feet vibrated gently, and with a deafening crack, the stone archway split apart, revealing a dark passageway leading deeper into the cliffside. Without hesitation, Lyra stepped inside, beckoning Marcus to follow. The interior of the sanctuary was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. The walls shimmered with veins of crystalline material, refracting the dim light into dazzling patterns that danced across the ceiling. Strange devices floated silently in midair, their surfaces covered in glowing runes that shifted and changed as they passed by. The air smelled clean and metallic, carrying a faint hum of energy that vibrated through their bones. "This place," Marcus murmured, his voice echoing softly. "It's incredible." "It's old," Lyra corrected, her tone reverent. "Older than my father's reign. Older than Vera itself. This was built by the first ones, the ancestors who discovered the essence and harnessed its power." As she spoke, she approached one of the floating devices, placing her hand atop it. Instantly, the runes flared to life, projecting holographic images into the air. Scenes of distant worlds unfolded before them. Lush forests teeming with alien life, cities suspended among the stars, and battles fought with weapons of unimaginable power. "These are records," Lyra explained, her voice tinged with wonder. "Histories of our people. Of others too. The first ones traveled far, seeking knowledge and understanding. But they also warned of dangers, of those who would misuse the essence for conquest and destruction." Marcus studied the projections carefully, his brow furrowing as he pieced together fragments of information. "Your father, he wants the essence because of this, doesn't he? Because of what it can do?" Lyra nodded solemnly. "Yes. And now, so do others. That's why I ran. Why I came here. I couldn't let them use it. Not like that." Her words hung heavy in the air, underscoring the gravity of their situation. They weren't just fugitives running from hunters. They were custodians of a legacy older than time itself, entrusted with protecting something that could shape the fate of countless worlds. But even in the sanctuary's protective embrace, safety proved elusive. Days turned into weeks as they explored the hidden chambers, uncovering secrets that both awed and terrified them. Lyra's health improved slightly, her essence replenishing itself in the sanctuary's nurturing environment. Yet Marcus noticed subtle changes in her demeanor, moments of distraction, flashes of unease that hinted at unresolved fears. One evening, as they sat together in a chamber bathed in soft golden light, Marcus finally broached the subject. "You've been quiet lately," he said gently. "What's wrong?" Lyra hesitated, her glowing eyes clouded with uncertainty. "I've been thinking about what the glowing figure said, that the essence binds destinies across galaxies. I don't know what it means, but it feels important. Like there's something I'm supposed to do, something bigger than myself." "You've already done so much," Marcus reminded her, reaching out to take her hand. "You've survived, fought back, protected not just yourself but me too. That's enough." "No," she countered firmly, shaking her head. "It's not. The essence chose me for a reason. My people chose me. And now, somehow, the universe has chosen me too. I can feel it pulling at me, calling me toward something. Marcus frowned, concern etching lines into his face. Calling you where? To what? I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But I think it's time we found out. Their decision to leave the sanctuary weighed heavily on both of them. It was a haven, a place where they could have stayed indefinitely, shielded from the chaos beyond. But Lyra's instincts told her they couldn't remain hidden forever. Not while her father's enforcers roamed free, not while the essence's true purpose remained shrouded in mystery. Armed with knowledge gleaned from the sanctuary's archives, they prepared for the journey ahead. Lyra fashioned weapons using materials scavenged from the ruins, infusing them with traces of her essence to enhance their capabilities. Marcus, meanwhile, studied maps projected by the floating devices, charting a course that would lead them away from the desert and toward a distant mountain range rumored to hold answers. On the morning of their departure, Lyra stood at the entrance of the sanctuary, gazing back at the glowing archway one last time. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice carrying a note of finality. Then, turning to Marcus, she smiled faintly. "Ready. As ready as I'll ever be," he replied, returning her smile with a determined nod. Together, they stepped out into the unknown, their hearts filled with equal parts fear and hope. The desert stretched endlessly before them, vast and unyielding, but they walked with purpose, side by side. For though their destination remained uncertain, one thing was clear. Their bond, a connection forged in fire and tempered by trust, would guide them through whatever lay ahead. And so, under the watchful gaze of the stars, Marcus and Lyra embarked on the next chapter of their journey. Two souls united by destiny and driven by a shared vision of peace. Whatever challenges awaited them, they faced them not as individuals, but as one. Their story was far from over, but it was theirs to write.